gang? Hey, what's good? And I'm back. Hey, I'm Titilayo, in case you don't know who I am. And this is my podcast called Back to Church. So I've realized I might already be on the verge of changing the name. However, we'll see how it goes. I'm a Gemini moon, ascendant, and Mars. So yeah, my tendency to overshare is already apparent, which leads me to the next part, which is I would love to hear actually anyone's signs in their charts which give them the most challenge. Recently I've been able to talk to my friends about parts in my chart, and I've realized it's been very therapeutic and eye-opening sometimes to see our experiences through mirrors of each other and to kind of just reflect in a sacred space with each other. So I encourage you to do it. Also, if you want to comment below as well, that would be amazing. I also thought I would mention that with this podcast, there will always be, hopefully, a visual aspect on the YouTube channel. But if you just want to listen, you can also find it on the SoundCloud. I actually started it not too long ago. This is episode 3. No, it's episode 2. I made episode 2, but somehow I skipped over to this, which is episode 3. Now I'll explain what episode 3 is, and it's about comparison being the thief of joy. Yes, that nice big subject. I've had friends tell me this, I've had myself tell me this, I've had my higher self tell me this, and I'm glad to make a podcast episode about it because I think it's really important. So between now and the last episode, I had a bit of hiatus considering how to make the next episode. I had this whole plan for what each episode would consist of, and all of a sudden, life. And so I just had to completely allow myself to derail and surrender and then make the next episode whenever it came along. So by my language, you can probably tell, yes, I have a life, and it's something I'm coming to terms with, but enough of me. So I want to take a moment to pass the energy to you. Yes, you, the viewer, the listener, the observer, the being. How are you? Take the time you need. Fortunately, we live in 2021 where you can use the pause button. Take the time you need to think. How are you? How are you feeling? How's your body feeling? Are you feeling connected, detached, balanced, nourished? Have you had your water? All them things. Any sensations you feel, take any moment, take the time you need to acknowledge them. Breathe in, hold for a few seconds, then release, and check in with your body. Anyways, today we are going to discuss something which, I didn't actually expect to make the episode. Originally, episode 2 was gonna be my analogy about the body being like a plant, something you nurture. But I was called to just do this subject today, which is joy, and more specifically, as I've already mentioned, comparison as a thief of joy, and an extension, the shadow of light. So on that note, I feel like I've given you guys a lot of information. So I'm just going to have a little break to listen to the musica, and I'll be back. I would spit on a track, but I ain't no rapper. Ay.
Think of you now. You just got to know.
Right, I'm back. It's good. I hope you enjoyed that little break. I hope you took the time to breathe or something, you know. I try to not make mindfulness, even though I'm not too sure about the term mindfulness because it implies that your mind is full. However, you know, being present, I do encourage it a lot, so bear with me on that. Okay, so comparison. From my experience, I've realized that comparison is a much more tricky than I gave it credit for.
Did I ever tell you guys about the time I met a Martian?
I used to assume that in not comparing myself to others, I was being less egotistical, and that if I judged myself harder than anyone around me, then nobody can steal my joy from me. And of course, that's not the most healthy way to live. It's not live. It's not compassionate, and it surely doesn't make me any more joyful. In fact, it robs me of opportunities to connect to joy in ways outside of my control. Now that, for me, sounds like a wonderful time. Okay, so before we dive in, firstly, I thought it would be best to have a clear picture of what comparison really is. So, the first thing on Google says that comparison is a consideration or estimate of the similarities or dissimilarities between two things or people. I find it absolutely fascinating that people is included in the definition of comparison, because that means people are needed for comparison to exist, right? And then another definition says when you make a comparison, you consider two or more things and discover the difference between them. So for me, I kind of prefer this definition. I would do the download thing and magically break down the word comparison. So of course you might have heard Capri-Sun, which is, I think, amazing. Well, actually, sorry. So as I thought Capri-Sun was an amazing beverage as a child. Actually, I used to freeze my Capri-Suns and make them into a slushie. But that's entirely besides the point of this podcast episode. Maybe we can get into it one day. However, when I think of Capri-Sun as a drink now, compared to when I was a child, what has changed? Truly. Yes, the recipes always change for the worse. Yes, I'm an adult and therefore I notice that the amount of sugar in children's drinks are overwhelming. But what is the most interesting thing is that as a child, I wasn't an adult. I was a child. And as a child, I loved Capri-Sun. I also hear compare to sun, to juxtapose to light, comparison. It really robs light of its shine. It doesn't take things on face value. And, you know, it's really not fun to be in the sunlight running away from your shadow. So instead of to compare, just let it be. Also the shadow, just let the shadow be there. Pay it no mind, unless it's yours. Then I suggest you get comfortable and familiar with the shadow. And if you can find it, maybe Peter Pan can offer you some advice. Okay, that was shade, but contradicting myself at the same time. In fact, what do you guys think? What comment below? Was Peter Pan, you know, narcissistic and someone who we should have learned a bit more from? Did you like Tinkerbell a bit more? I love Tinkerbell. But as I give you this short pause, I'm going to let you enjoy this song, which I think is brilliant.
Snowflakes were just piling it up. A cigarette spoke to me in smoke. Cocaine, better take your time out. Birds will fly up, clouds will cry out. No sister,
Yo, fam, I legit really love this song. If you want this music, just hit up the SoundCloud and you'll find this shit. It's right there for you, baby. Alright, so I believe it's difficult to talk about comparison without firstly discussing difference. What is difference? Difference is a point or a way in which people or things are dissimilar. So in comparison to difference, I think the beauty with difference is the opportunity to honor and respect not the self but also others. Now, what happens if we do what I do when you compare differences in your own idea of self? Well, very cutthroat inner critique. It's not cute if you imagine a tiny version of yourself in your head compartmentalizing yourself, so please, if you can, avoid comparison to others and the self. It will save you a lot of time and energy. Honestly, I don't believe it's ever healthy to rob yourself of your own joy. So don't let a comparison and that little critic in your head run around in your mind telling you what to do. Remember always that you are enough. I think a good character I think of when I think of comparison is Terry, the accountant from the movie Soul. If you've checked it out, the movie Soul, currently on Disney Plus. If you have Disney Plus, go check it. If you don't, find someone who has it. And if you can't get access to it, well, comparison is the thief of joy. Anyways, so Terry, he just couldn't stop keeping account of things. If you remember in the film, he was so fixated on control and doing his job. So from my interpretation, he was the keeper of time and pretty good at it. Every person accounted for every second in reality. Every second is sacred and divine. So wonder he wanted to make sure everything was perfect and in order. However, wouldn't it have been nice for Terry to go and, have a interesting internal exploration about the idea that maybe the thing going out of control was meant to happen. Maybe the circumstance was meant to be that way. What if Terry allowed himself to find out what happens when things don't go the way he is familiar with? So, I would have said to Terry to ask himself, what do I learn from a circumstance which is outside of my control in the first place? One thing I've learned with time is this: you can't control time. In fact, yes, to an extent, numbers and time are both illusions. However, we do have a choice about what to do with our time, and also what choices we make in our mind about our time. Do we choose to take time to draw up a multitude of comparisons and differences and reasons? Do we use our time to make things happen? Or do we make the choice to take our time for what it is? Endless opportunities to make decisions, to choose ourselves every day. For example, maybe instead of ruminating about what we did yesterday, recognizing today is a new day, I decide what to do with it. It's my time. And on that note, cue the music, maestro!